Welcome to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakups podcast with your host, ajmahari. This podcast will give you an in-depth understanding of borderline personality disorder, whether you have it or a loved one, partner, ex, friend, adult child, or sibling of someone with borderline personality disorder. Mahari is a counselor and trauma recovery coach who has 30 years experience working with those surviving borderline personality relationship breakups in all relationship types, healing from codependency, inner child healing, family of origin healing, and self-differentiation, narcissistic abuse recovery, and much more. Keeping it real to help you heal. Abuse is not love. You can find this podcast at ajmahari.ca, where you can also purchase and book sessions with ajmahari.
The 7 stages of the BPD relationship cycle. The main theme of BPD relationship cycles is the classic push-pull approach, avoidance conflict, the pattern that tends to play out in the occurrences of everything to do with why borderlines do what they do, each with their own unique set of the traits or how there's 256 symptom combinations apparently for BPD. So most people with BPD will find themselves oscillating between being open somewhat, a little bit. It's not really open, but they look more open. Loving, maybe seemingly. Kind, yeah. I don't know about generous, because some would say, but not really. And how genuine is that? And then there'll be rejecting and the opposite, and cold or devaluing, of course, and or just ghost, discard, get lost, or do a whole lot of silent treatment withdrawal, or a whole lot of yelling and screaming at you, and a lot of behaviors that can be very malicious and very spiteful, all an attempt for people with BPD to meet their own emotional needs. And you know what? It doesn't meet their emotional needs anyway. So the first stage, right, of the BPD relationship, obviously, is attraction. So they're undoubtedly, this is the most pleasant stage, obviously, the idealization stage, where they're people-pleasing through their codependency, and they're mirroring you. And by the way, because they're mirroring you, I love what some people say out there. It's just funny. It doesn't mean you're falling in love with yourself. Okay, let me make that clear, because that's just ridiculous. That doesn't have any logic behind it, in my opinion. So people call, or used to call, this the honeymoon phase. You know, when I'm working with clients, and even like on a live stream here, or like comments on the channel, people aren't really talking about honeymoon phases anymore. I'm not sure what that really means, because that's kind of like the attraction. It happens quickly. It's very intense, usually for the people with codependency who don't know what they're getting into. For the person with BPD, who may or may not know they have BPD, it's that unconscious setup, as I've talked about, wherein when this relationship begins, it also starts to end, but nobody knows that in the beginning. And it feels so great. And I have videos on this too, because in idealization, even in that initial idealization phase, they're still not seeing you for who you really are. But I have videos that explain that more. And so everybody kind of knows a lot about this initial honeymoon phase, idealization, etc. And, you know, the phase could last several weeks, up to 6 months. For some people, it can last a year and a half. It could last 5 minutes. It's really all over the map how long it could last or not. And the second stage of a BPD relationship, why do borderlines do what they do? Obsessed with their own neediness, but not consciously aware of that. So in this stage, it's the tone of the relationship begins to shift to more dysfunctional tendencies, right? Certainly, it's no longer in the idealization honeymoon phase. Boom, there's a split to devaluation at least, if not many. And the person with BPD will start to become irritable and nitpick over anything that they might perceive as negative behavior that was aimed at them, you know, or like how they get triggered to emotional dysregulation. And then they have a dissociative experience of varying degrees that they're not aware of, that they are now re-experiencing something from the past that they think you're doing to them now, but you're not doing it to them. It may have happened to them from in childhood, but it all gets mixed. And this is how you get experienced so often as the object other parent representation. And they don't know that consciously, by the way. And if a partner doesn't immediately respond, to calls or texts or whatever the borderline is after, needing attention, soothing, etc., then the person with BPD will be convinced that they aren't really loved. You didn't do that right enough, fast enough, the way I wanted it. But they can't even express those things because it's in their unconscious. And the third stage of the BPD relationship on the part of the borderline, and why borderlines do what they do, is withdrawing and withholding. And even within petulant, that classic acting out, raging borderline presentation, there's still withdrawing. Well, not maybe as much withdrawing, but there's withholding. But then there's everything they don't even know they're withholding. And it's like, I'm going to get you phase because everything is your fault, which of course is not true at all. And in this stage with withdrawing and withholding, so maybe more the quiet borderline in this stage, I don't know if the classic acting out will have this stage exactly. Strategy is intended to get the partner to invest more heavily in the borderline's emotional needs. And so you might see the classic acting out borderline in this phase kind of ghost you for a while and then come back, whether it's days or whatever, on and off, because they're trying to get you more heavily invested in meeting their emotional needs. But they often don't even know that. And they have this, quote, standard that you're supposed to meet with how you meet all their needs. Because after all, what needs of yours are they really meeting beyond often attraction, physical intimacy? Often it comes down to nothing more than that, if that remains the case. And so they can instigate arguments in this phase, get the partner to fight for the relationship, in effect, fight for them. And this is all in an effort to help the borderline to feel more regulated and secure in themselves, as if they've somehow, like, they got you, but they might not know it that way. But what is this really all about in the third phase of BPD? Like everything really is in each phase, but it's about you being experienced as object other parent representation. A bad mom, bad dad, good mom never had, or probably good dad never had, when they're in the not the devaluation, because that's the all bad, all painted to black stuff. And ain't no mistake about it, it's them, and again, not always consciously, knowingly, but manipulating you, testing, and the approach avoidance conflict. Oh, getting close. It's great, isn't it? But then they can't stand being close, so they'll start a fight over you have no clue what, because nothing just happened in the here and now. And the fourth stage of the BPD relationship cycle, escalating the devaluing. And in this stage, things really worsen. And the person with BPD, when they don't receive the desired attention, and even if they are, like, the other thing about people with BPD untreated, they're insatiable. So they're not the same as narcissists, but they have an insatiability of their own. So it doesn't matter how much you try to trip over yourself, as some people do for a while, to meet their every need, to answer the calls, to get home on time, to not try to trigger them, all the eggshell walking. And when you're on that roller coaster, right? And you're never going to be able to do it, quote, good enough for their, quote, expectations, unquote. Because what do they expect of you in general, but in this fourth stage of a BPD relationship, escalating devaluation? They're expecting you to be mommy and daddy to their 3-year-old. In other words, like when they were 3, they're just expecting you to read their mind, to know what they need, to know what they want, and to always be thinking about them, because essentially they are, in one way or another, or what they perceive you just did to them, or how you didn't do this for them, or why did you say that? You know what I mean? As much as on the other side of the person with BPD, people are like, why do borderlines do this? Why do they say this? Why is this person doing this? What is going on? I have no idea. Why am I getting blamed for everything? So in this phase, they truly begin to enter a panic mode, which may have no basis in reality, right? Sometimes things have escalated, and not every person who's in the relationship with the borderline, not every person with codependency is going to be as giving. Some people get really frustrated and provoked and get reactive back because you're getting really hurt and you're not being seen or heard. The lack of validation that the borderline in panic mode is experiencing, because maybe you're going through some stuff too and you can't meet their needs anyways, and maybe they were looking for perfection unknowingly, maybe not consciously. So then they feel like more of a lack of validation, and you can't validate them enough, and that's not your problem and it's not your responsibility. And then they get more heavily triggered to their abandonment wound, and the fights and the devaluation can increase quite dramatically in frequency and intensity. And sometimes they'll ghost on and off in that, right? Might be a discard, a comeback, a recycle. And this leads people with BPD to completely devaluing their partner, gaslighting, and falling into the the victim state of ego, which is constantly actually really their go-to, if you know what I mean, from the past. But they think it's because you're victimizing them in the here and now. So these instances can often come out of nowhere, these events, these times, these triggered situations. And this is a big reason why most BPD relationships fail. And often, right at this fourth stage here with the escalating devaluation. Oh, but the fifth stage, if it doesn't happen in the fourth stage or before, is of a BPD relationship is the breakup. And after things have escalated to the point that there's nowhere else for the borderline to go, they'll either announce that they're breaking up with their partner. Some do announce it, many don't. Or else they simply leave unannounced. That's the ghosting, or discard, but you don't know, because sometimes when you're like, it's a ghosting too, and they don't all ghost to discard to be gone, right? You never know. Some have these patterns of ghosting every 2 days, every 3 days, every 6 days, every 7 days, every 2 weeks, and then they have a pattern of how long they stay away and they come back. Partners actually get used to that, but nobody should be accepting that either. And it's going to portend it's going to worsen and intensify until they're not coming back, or until you end up reverse hoovering them, but nothing's going to change and the cycle's just going to spin faster. It's always rinse and repeat, unfortunately, with people with BPD. And people with codependency have their own unconscious repetition compulsions of externalizing out different things, right? Giving, trying to rescue, trying to meet the borderline's needs, etc., so that you hope your needs will be met, or that you'll be seen and heard one day. And this is the woundiness of how codependency really develops in childhood for most people, though there's more to it than that. So in the breakup phase, the fifth phase of the relationship, under this phase sort of model I'm putting out here, it can happen out of nowhere. It's their emotional needs. They monkey branch, they go elsewhere. The idealization phase, starting with someone else when they're not really done with you, or you don't know if they just ghosted and you're not sure. Ghosting can be discarding, but it's not always known by the person who got ghosted that they've been discarded, because some ghost, come back. Some just ghost and never come back, or not until the next relationship doesn't work out, or who knows. Some really never hoover. But the point here is that they will go elsewhere to start trying to find their needs, to get their emotional needs met, even though they don't know that the grass isn't greener over there, and that you weren't the problem why they didn't get their emotional needs met, because they need to go to therapy for that. And this stage of the relationship is when they'll start to accuse the partner, if they haven't already before, being the one that has a disorder and all the dysfunctional behavior, and everything's your fault. And this is the juncture in the phases, if not in the fourth phase, in the breakup fifth phase of the BPD relationship, when core pattern cycles. And they're going to say to you, you're a narcissist. Huh? There's a lot of that going around when it's absolutely not true. Some people with BPD really are with narcissists, and that would be true. But not more often than they're with people with codependency. The number 6 stage phase in the BPD relationship cycles is, wait a minute, why is there a 6th stage when stage 5 was the breakup? What's happening? In the BPD relationship cycle, core pattern across most people with BPD, especially untreated, that there's 2 stages of the BPD relationship cycle after the breakup stage or phase of the BPD relationship cycle. Could this be why these are some of the most painful, if not the most painful, relationship breakups across the board? Stage or phase 6 of the BPD relationship cycle is the return, in many cases, to try to, quote, repair, unquote. Let me just say, why do borderlines do what they do? Well, this cycle here and this stage number 6 after the breakup, return to, like, quote, repair, people with BPD do not know how to repair anything. So they need substantial treatment and recovery to be able to do that. But they come back like a young child. And if they're hoovering you and you've kind of almost had it, but you're missing them and everything, then what happens is they'll give you everything because they have, high IQs often, but they just have like no emotional intelligence or very low. They'll be telling you everything you want to hear to get back with you because promises and I'll go to therapy and I understand this now. And it could be like 2 days later. They just don't understand. Nothing's changed. It takes years for them to change. And so they're coming back to try to repair what essentially they still think you did to them. So what's up with that? Because they're not even coming back to repair anything that they've done to you because, no, that's not on the radar. So they're trying for some kind of reconciliation, which sometimes they get that, right? You reconcile, but then what happens? The same cycles again, rinse and repeat. So the person with BPD might return if the partner accepts them back. That's what's difficult for partner exes not to do. And because you want them back often. Yeah, it really takes the partner kind of taking on the blame. And then and maybe the person with BPD might say, well, gee, I guess maybe I didn't do something so well or whatever, but they'll probably be vague. And if they're more specific, it's through their intelligence, their IQ, intellectual intelligence, not emotional knowing or any change. They take on, so if they do take on the blame, they promise to meet their emotional needs. The partner will do this more so than the person with BPD. So the ex will try to meet their needs. Yeah, take on the blame and just apologize. Like, I'm sorry, I must have got it wrong before. I'll do it better. But the borderline hoovering back too in this, phase 6 after they break up with you, ghost, discard, whatever the case, or if you broke up with them even, then they're coming back promising you the moon, and they don't have the moon to deliver. Behaviors and triggering may regulate within the dynamic for a while. Yeah, and often really briefly, like a month. I've had so many clients. It's like 2 days, 3 days, 7 days, a week, a month. And there might be another honeymoon period, but it won't be like the first honeymoon period. That's really fantasy at that point. And the first honeymoon period is rather kind of a fantasy too, but nobody knows that at the time. People with BPD don't set out to target like narcissists do. They don't know this usually. And other people who are getting involved with them have no idea what's going to happen. Any kind of like, quote, re-idealization, unquote, in the coming back in the hoover of the trying to repair and get you backstage that you might want to engage in, it really blows out quickly. Now, we actually have a 7th stage. So, 5 was the breakup. This is really, specific to BPD relationship breakups, could be mirrored in different ways in NPD breakups, but not regular breakups. So after we have the breakup stage, which is the 5th one, then there's a 6th, right? Well, hoover back, let's do it again, try harder, come on, you can do better, they'll say to you, not really in those words, and you're like, I can do better. I got another chance. I'll do this. I won't do that. None of that matters, because it's not your fault in the first place. Why these relationships are impossible. So then after that 6th stage, now here comes stage 7. What could that possibly be of a BPD relationship? But it broke up. And now there's this repair kind of, in quotes, situation, and you want them back, and they want to come back. And okay. So the 7th phase is the cycle repeats, obviously, right? Rinse and repeat. And so this final stage is the beginning of a new cycle. And it's important to note that each case Each person with BPD is unique. Not all these cycles will unfold the same way, same speed, same patterns in between, etc. So there's no absolute for how each one plays out, but they do play out. And it's wash, rinse, and repeat in very painful ways. The same is true of cycles within a BPD relationship. Once the initial breakup has happened, it's not uncommon for the situation to become much more volatile, dangerous, violent also in many cases, by the way. Not all, but in many, with women with BPD and men with BPD. And not all women and not all men with BPD. But things can get much more intense, much more volatile. They're moving much more quickly. They're devaluing more. So when they're in that I hate you place, they hate you even more. And you have to be careful. It can get really dangerous. And there will be more consistent triggers, gaslighting attempts, manipulation, emotional outbursts, or the opposite in the quiet borderline. But even quiet borderlines can have some emotional outbursts. BPD relationships will always work in some form of the cycle that I'm talking about here. I don't really know that there are successful, in quotes, successful BPD relationships, unquote, though some do last a long, long time. People are still walking on the eggshells and the cycles are still happening. So, quote, a successful BPD relationship, unquote, would be when somehow the borderline finds an end to the volatility, to not an end, not an ending of it, but like a level by which they won't maybe escalate more, perhaps. And then the partner just keeps on working on how to manage all the walking on eggshells, all the agony, all the on, off again, all the stuff that is part of all of the cycles. And there are people, it's not happening as much with younger people today, but still some older people that have been married for 25, 30 years to somebody with borderline personality. And sometimes they don't know what it is and they still haven't figured it out. Then they figure it out. But I've been working with clients that are going through divorces anywhere from, 5, 10, 15, 25, 30 years of marriage. And because they're finally waking up to the codependency, to what's been going on, to what they put up with, to what they've been put through. And so none of those relationships or a longer relationship in a person that you might be with or have been with BPD, that they had a longer one, doesn't mean it was healthier, doesn't mean anything was different, because these are the cycles of the BPD relationship. And the seventh one, why is there a seventh one? Fifth one was the breakup. Sixth was try for repair it right. Or I got the numbers wrong. And the seventh stage, right, was, yes, the cycle repeats. So in these 7 stages of BPD relationships, I don't know if there's anything that really makes that experience worthwhile. It doesn't really help the person with BPD, and it really, really injures and devastates people who are on the other side of somebody with BPD. So that is the 7 phases of the BPD relationship cycle that is, quote, archetypal, unquote, for all people with BPD unless and until they receive significant treatment, work their way through to healing and recovery. So untreated or not yet very well treated, the BPD relational cycle, 7 stages of, and it's rinse and repeat, and it's half of the trauma bond that those who try to love people with BPD and significant other relationships get into, and bring their half of a trauma bond that's in their unconscious to, quote, fit, unquote, with this trauma bonded relationship. 7 stages of the BPD relationship, 7 stages of the BPD relational cycle of rinse, repeat, impossibility. The BPD relationship breakup, that for most people isn't really a breakup, that is the ending after the first trip around a very painful BPD relational repetitive cycle. And it's interesting that there are 2 stages in the BPD relationship cycle of rinse and repeat that occur after the breakup, or the first breakup, and or the second breakup, and or the fifth, and or the 10th. How is it the codependents get so locked in through the trauma bond to repeating and getting involved again with the same person often, to quote X, because you've been through the relationship, the BPD relationship cycle? How many people are going to get to the point where that's the breakup, like the final breakup versus a breakup? And then what happens after a breakup, or if it's your 5th or 7th or 10th breakup at the end, or a pause after the BPD relationship cycle, and then breakup, and then what comes after the breakup, and what comes up, or what happens, what develops, what starts the cycle of the BPD relationship all over again. This, wash, rinse, repeat, borderline personality, untreated people with BPD, inevitable, continual going around the same cycles with these 7 stages or phases of the same cycle. What inevitably happens is people just do the whole thing over and over and over, and on and off and on and off. And at some point, any point in a repeated, rinse, repeat cycle, the BPD relationship cycle, and its stages, and the person with BPD may devalue, split, ghost, and the cycle may abruptly stop. And this can't be predicted, which people with BPD untreated, which people are going to do that, which people aren't. What are the percentages? Nobody knows. But for you, as a codependent, more likely than not, if you're still going through this, if you've been through this, if you relate to this, if you're with somebody with BPD and you're like, well, I don't know, I think we're going to work out, this is going to be okay, no matter what's happening or not yet, whatever stage or phase of the BPD relationship cycle you might be in with someone, it's so important to know that this is a very sort of universal, almost really we could say archetypal type of relationship pattern, stages and cycles in the cycle with people with untreated borderline personality disorder. And it's really important to go no contact after the first time you go through this core pattern, BPD, rather archetypal as I just said, relationship cycle, that it's going to be wash, rinse, repeat. It's so painful. It is for the people with BPD. They don't really consciously understand a lot about it if they have no treatment. But it is incredibly, even almost life-shattering. People with codependency, people have been the partner, now the ex, and the partner, the ex, the partner, the ex. However many, cycles you've been through of these 7 stages. People lose themselves. People don't know themselves anymore. And if you're in that situation, I'm out here to work with you. If I resonate with you, because people, after going through all this, once, let alone twice, 3 times, 8 times, 10 times, 15 times, or more, over the course of months to weeks even, to months, to years, to 9 years, 10 years, 15 years, 25 years, you know you're in a lot of pain through a lot of the relationship, and and these different stages and phases, and that, and there's all that, there's the trauma bond, the cognitive dissonance. For some people, limerence is a part of that. It's just something that people have to realize. You're never going to feel ready to stop. You're never going to feel ready to get out. Some people do, but most people don't. And there's still that longing, that missing them, that hoping. And the reasons for this are not really in the codependence here and now either, only. They are largely, even beyond the here and now reasons of recycling endlessly with a person with BPD, with these core patterns, these 7 stages of the rinse-repeat BPD relational cycle that can't change unless until they have significant treatment in one of the best modalities for people that heal and recover from BPD, and they must go through approximately 5 to 8 to 16 years of that therapy. So when they come hovering back after 2 months or 3 weeks or a year, they're not going to be changed. And what are you doing for you in the meantime? This is such a reality onto its own in terms of relating to somebody with BPD. Don't kid yourself anymore. All the pain you're in and all you've been through and all the reasons why there's a trauma bond and all the reasons why you still haven't broken that trauma bond, if that's what resonates for you, wherever you're at with this, and why you still want them back, and why you miss them, and maybe you don't want them back, but you still miss them, and you still feel like you wish you could talk to them once more, and you really want them to hear how they hurt you, but that's not really possible. This is what people are going through at the end of all this, and that's why it's so important to get to no contact and stop repeating on and off the stages of the BPD relationship rinse repeat cycles that do not change unless until they've had years of therapy and really engaged it. So if you can relate to this and you're in that agony, cognitive dissonance, missing them still, you got disavowal of your emotions, you might still want them back, but they're not in contact with you right now. Or you might have heard out there, oh, no, you don't have to go no contact. Just don't contact them first. No, you need absolute no contact to be able to continue, get into a process, working with someone like myself, if I resonate with you, to get through this. All the pain that you might be in right now, or whatever parts of the pain that you're still carrying, the confusion, if you're still experiencing limerence, rumination, obsessive thinking about them, wanting them back, focusing on the good half only of the cognitive dissonance of the reality of what you've experienced. It's going to be really important for you to know that you need help now so that you can work toward getting no contact, or if there's children involved, extremely low contact. So lots of people that come to work with me, I'm sure others as well, but lots of people need help to get to no contact. So don't think that you have to get there somehow or keep fighting it, or get into a process of healing and recovery for yourself. And know also that all the pain you're in, all the lostness you feel, the fog, how much this has really affected you. It affects people, their physical health as well as their mental health. So many different consequences of agony with this, that not all your pain, not all your lostness, not all of what you need to heal is all about the borderline at all. Even though you've been through this, and many people have been through the borderline relationship cycle, the 7 stages, or however many stages, 5, and you know what I'm saying? They're not always linear, and they do it over and over and over. But what's driving you to do that over and over? You have your thoughts about that, right? In here now, you're thinking as an adult, well, I really love this person. But who are you loving when you know they're not who you thought they were? It is crucial to realize that the reason that you can't break the trauma bond goes back to your family of origin, wounded inner child, and that you can't just walk away and heal yourself, because it's not all about the cluster B. It's not all about this BPD relationship cycle that you have gone through at least once, if not many times. That is really painful, and that's adding to your pain, and it's also triggering your core pain from your past in your childhood and family of origin. That is the reason that you have codependency. That is the reason that you can't break. You're in a trauma bonded relationship, and much of the reason why you can't break it, because it gets broken in the deeper work, in the family of origin, inner child healing, and other parts of that work. I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you, and please think about this some more, because repeating these cycles is just that. And it's more pain, and it's more pain, it's more false hope, it's more just crushing reality of this isn't going to work. And that's not what love is. And you deserve so much more than that.
You've been listening to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakups podcast with counselor and trauma recovery coach, ajmahari. Keeping it real to help you heal. Abuse is not love. You can find this podcast website with blogs and more information and purchase some book sessions with ajmahari at ajmahari.ca to help you with your healing and recovery journey from any relationship type with somebody with borderline personality. Please also check AJ's other website, bpdbreakups.com, for blog posts and more information. Please keep tuning in.